Hi. It's me, Heidi, and I want to start today by saying how much I appreciate those of you who are showing up each and every week to listen to this podcast. It is a deep honor and something that I take very, very seriously. And it's something I appreciate very, very much. And also, it is something that brings me a little bit of fear, knowing that each and every week you guys are showing up for me, has me once again, man, I'm beating a dead horse with this, but this is just the reality of this. Once again, it has me questioning my worthiness to do this. And it has me wondering if what I'm giving you is enough. I know I said it in the first episode and I'm going to say it again. I am not here to teach you. I'm here to love you. And hopefully through my love, you will be taught. I would be lying though if I said that, as I come to record these, I have so many thoughts and so many ideas. I'd be lying if I told you I felt super confident about what I'm doing. And honestly, before every single podcast I do, there has not been one podcast to date where I've gone to record where I'm like, I am ready. I am doing this. Maybe the day before, but what's interesting is as I inch closer to recording every podcast, there's an odd sense of stuckness that creeps into me. And like literally the minutes before, the seconds before, it gets deeper. And it's like the doubt in my head is going at 100 miles an hour. All of the reasons why I shouldn't do the podcast today and maybe I should wait until tomorrow creeps back in again. I'm recording this on a Wednesday. I know you guys are going to listen to it on Monday, potentially, if you're listening the day it comes out. I was supposed to record this podcast Monday. So 2 days ago, I was supposed to record this podcast. And here we are. I said, okay, wait, no. We're going to do it Tuesday. Okay, Tuesday came. We're going to do it Wednesday. And even tonight, right now, I'm like, man, maybe I should just push this and do it tomorrow morning before I leave town at 6:30 in the morning, which is not going to happen. I actually leave town tomorrow morning at 6:30 a.m., but I've come up with every single reason already why I should not record this podcast today. And I think one of the biggest reasons for me why that fear is still there is I have only ever known my existence in the public as someone who teaches you guys, as a professional, right? I've taught nutrition education. I've taught fitness. I've taught personal development. And I have a very, I think, beautiful and robust curriculum with a great team that's helped me create all of it. It's not just me. I've had an incredible, many wonderful collaborators to help me come up with what we have. And here I am now in a totally different format that is real and raw. And my natural instinct and my natural inclination, right? When the podcast starts to get feedback and people are like, I like this. My natural inclination is, oh my gosh, I need to start teaching again. I need to start pulling all the things that I know work. What? And I actually get in that mindset. And then I start creating, you guys, the notes that I have, there's 8 pages here. There's 2 pages here. I know you're listening right now. There's 3 more pages right here on lined paper. The notes that I have of the things I want to teach you are all over. And then what happens is I sit in front, I'm overwhelmed by the things I need to teach. I sit in front of it. I read it all. And then I'm like, what am I doing? Heidi, remember this podcast is not a thing that you are creating and doing to help build the kingdom of Heidi. This podcast is a thing you have agreed to do to help build the kingdom of God. And I have chills as I say this. Heidi, this podcast is not a thing you are adding to your plate because you need to prove your worthiness, like you used to. No, this podcast is an ask from God and a promise from Him to make you a channel to convey the words and the messages that need to be conveyed. And so, yeah, I have things highlighted here. I've got a lot of notes on top of notes, typed notes, color-coded notes. And I realize that that's not what you guys need. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, to be honest. I think what you guys need, and I have my good friend Kara to thank for this. Actually, Monday, when I was going to record the podcast the first time, when I backed out, I decided to go to Optimize with Kara, which is a place I love. Optimize is a place where we cold plunge in sauna, and I do breath work inside of this really cool room that has a biocharger. I'm sure I've talked about it on here. And it's a place that I go. I love to say that that breath work and body work and soul work like that, it is the inner church that is just as, if not more important, to connect and have a part of along with the outer church. So it is my inner church that goes with the outer church. So religion or spirituality or anything we're doing where we're talking about the Word of God, great. But for me, if I am a closed off being and I have an agitated nervous system, I cannot be a channel for God. And so, and I felt that on Monday. I felt, oh my gosh, I am completely closed off. I'm letting all of the fears to come in and control my way of thinking. I'm like, literally, Moses could be in front of me right now speaking the word of God, and I would not hear him. I couldn't hear him because I am so closed off right now. I can't connect with myself. And if I cannot connect with myself, I cannot connect with God. And if I can't connect with God, I'm not conveying the message of God. And this makes this whole thing irrelevant and something I shouldn't be doing. So I actually took time. I was very, 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 very stuck on Monday. I mean, in a major way. And guys, there's a part of me that's embarrassed to tell you guys this stuff. Like, you in this podcast are getting a real live peek at these insecurities that I have. And what's interesting is you are getting a peek at these insecurities for the first time, as I am sometimes noticing them for the first time as well. I think in my life previously, historically, I've stayed so busy that I have not allowed myself the time or the space to let what's there and has been there all along come out. And in this season, I am letting myself be free. And I truly believe that allowing myself to be free is a massive and major step in my healing. And I recognize that me being free in front of a camera and on a microphone does make me incredibly vulnerable. And that's a scary thing. I know I've talked about that before. But again, I feel like this is what I need to do. And I'm going to go back to Kara. Kara, I appreciate you if you're listening to this, because I went to Optimize with you the other day in this very stuck state. And when she arrived at my house, and I was not me. I am not joking you. I was not me. I was very rigid and cold and almost mad. And my anger, I am going to say anger, I felt a little bit upset, maybe at myself, for starting this podcast. I felt a little bit upset at, maybe frustrated. I don't want to say upset, maybe frustrated with God for asking me to do it. And maybe mostly frustrated with myself because maybe I got it wrong and I wasn't supposed to do this after all. And now I'm in, a person who's going to take back and stop what I already started. And that sucks, right? Like, I was in this place of, I want to quit. I want to quit this podcast. I had 6 episodes out or recorded, and I'm like, I think I'm done. I think I'm done. I don't want to do it. Once again, I was kind of doing this thing where I was, if you remember from episode 1, I think I maybe drew this visual. And if I didn't, I'm going to draw it now. I felt like there was a rope around me and someone was pulling me and I was just digging my heels in. And Kara showed up to my house so bright and so light and so excited to be with me. And I automatically, when she walked in the door, I felt her energy and I knew my energy. I felt her brightness and I knew my darkness in that moment. And I automatically felt bad because I knew I was not matching her. And then I felt guilty because I was in a room with someone who typically I match the energy of. And today I felt like all I was doing is bringing her down. And I'm sure she could tell. She didn't say if she couldn't, but we got in the car, we drove to Optimize and we had a conversation and she was just bubbling with joy and excitement and life and activity and activation. All things. I mean, you guys have seen Kira. So there's Kara. This is Kara. Kira is the one who's been on the podcast, but you guys have witnessed my friend Kira on the podcast, and she is all of those things. Kara is the same. She is and was all of those things. And seeing that bright light in her made me feel more insecure and more insignificant and more upset. And I could not figure out how to get past this stuckness. And the only way in my head was, I'm going to quit the podcast. I'm literally going to quit the podcast. I'm not doing this. I don't have enough time. This is the voice in my head. I don't have enough time. I have 4 kids going in 4 completely different directions at 4 different schools. It feels like a lot. So in my mind, I'm like, I got to quit this. I cannot do this. I cannot. And now I'm going to look stupid in front of everyone. And I don't know what they need to hear. I'm not sure what to teach. I can pull from all these different things. And then all of these thoughts going through my mind, these thoughts are going through my mind, and Kara's talking. And she actually, out of the blue, I mean, we had talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about grief because she had just had someone pass as well. We had talked about the podcast, and she actually turned to me out of the blue and said, "Hey, I feel like you need to hear this right now." She said, "I listened to your first episode today." And she said, "I want to let you know how proud I am to be your friend," which felt very nice because I am very proud to be her friend. I'm very proud of all of my friends. But she said, "I feel like you need to hear that no one wants to hear you do a podcast the same way everyone else does a podcast." She said, quote, I mean, I might get this wrong, but she said, quote, "I have no interest in listening to any of those podcasts. I don't have interest in listening to someone teach me in a traditional way. I'm beyond that in my life. I feel like that's for the sheep." And she said, "I believe," and take it for what it's worth, but I believe what people need from you is you just showing up as you. And I remember when she said it first, I was still kind of shut off to the whole idea. I was like, yeah. I like, why does anyone want me to show up as me? You know? And then she brought that up probably 5 or 6 more times throughout the night. And as we were kind of talking about other things, and really she was slowly inching her way. It's like she found a little crack in my mask, in my shield. And like her light slowly was making its way in and opening me up. It was like there was a crack and it was like, and she kept opening me up little by little by little. And towards the end of the night, I don't remember exactly what the shift was, but there was a moment where I remember her saying again, "Hey, I'm going to say it again. And I know I keep saying the same thing, but people do not want you to try with this podcast. What they want is for you to show up as you." She said they want to witness you going through this process, because as you go through, they can relate. And she one of the things she said too that I really appreciated was she said, it's like when you step into a room. When you step into a room, she said, you light up the room, not because of how you try, but because of who you are. And I'm telling you guys this not to brag. I'm telling you guys this because I feel the same way about her. And I feel the same way about so many other friends of mine. So as she said that, something literally clicked in my mind. I thought of Kira Polson walking into a room. When Kira does not try, when Kira is just Kira, like when I am going back and forth with her over voice memo during the day and we are just spilling our true feelings, like our deepest, darkest, scariest thoughts, that is when I love her the most because she is just being who she is. And in who she is, I am actually able to connect to who I am. And I am able to feel more human. And I am able to see in her experience myself and potentially a way through the struggle that I'm dealing with. And that just happened today with her. I mean, there was some back and forth over text that had me I actually said to her, I said, you are so bold. Like you being bold is an example to me and a reminder to me that my boldness will shift other people the same way your boldness has shifted me. But back to Optimize, it was a really, really cool experience with Kara. And I really appreciate Kara because in hearing like her opening me up with her light and her reminding me that this is not supposed to be a traditional podcast. This is supposed to be me showing up as me, sharing me, as confusing and nonsensical as that sounds to me. Because I mean, I learn more from other people. I don't learn as much from me. So it's hard for me to envision you are learning from me. But as confusing as it is, I do trust that. And I do trust that this is what it's supposed to be. I had the realization the other day that this podcast I'm going to do seasons. I should say I made the decision that I'm going to do seasons in this podcast for a handful of reasons. It kind of gives me a start and an end. By the way, thank you for being along this journey with me, because you're creating this alongside me. Your feedback is creating this alongside me. But the seasons, by giving it a start and an end, I feel like I'm not climbing a mountain that is what's the word? I feel like I'm not climbing a mountain that is unsummitable, if that makes sense. Instead, I can digest and I can fathom chapters, right, of a book. Like, but you give me a book that does not have an end in sight. It's just page after page after page to infinity and beyond. Like, that is so intimidating. And I think there's been a part of me with this podcast that started to feel so insanely intimidated by the idea of it never ending. I'm like, OMG, every week for the rest of my life. What if I run out of inspiration? What if God stops speaking to me? What if, I don't know, like, what am I, like, I'm not anything great. Why? And listen, we are all something great. So I need to be careful when I say that. I'm giving you my negative self-talk as I say that. But truly, the idea that it is never ending is absolutely terrifying to me. So this idea of seasons is awesome because I love the idea of seasons in my life. I love knowing that, and I've talked about this before on here, but I love knowing that I just came out of a long, freaking hellish, dark, cold winter, right? And now that it's springtime, right? And I'm in creation again, there's the occasional dark, cold day. Cause like in spring, there's the occasional dark, cold day. And I feel it, but I know I'm in a spring, right? And I know after spring is going to be summer where I'm like actually frolicking in the meadows and having pool parties or whatever it is, right? In my creation. And then after summer, I know there's going to be fall again and it's going to be time to let go of something. We talked about this in a previous podcast. It's letting go of those leaves. It's going to be time for those leaves to fall and me to let go of them. So And then after fall, we all know it's winter again. So I love the idea of seasons because it gives me comfort that I am exactly where I'm supposed to be at all times and in all places and in all things. I am where I'm supposed to be. So this season thing, it also is going to give me a little bit of a break, because like with a season, I can do 8 episodes, 9 episodes, 10. I can take a little bit of a break. I can really take time, like with our goals that we set, I can take time to look back and say, okay, am I on track? Are these mini goals? Is this mini season? Is this bringing me closer to where I want to be in my life? Okay. Yes, no. What are the areas that it is? What are the areas that it's not? Let's reevaluate. Let's reassess. Let's make some tweaks to the plan. And then let's do it again. And there's something so beautiful about that rest period. So if anyone here is thinking of starting a podcast or doing anything, I'm going to encourage that you build in rest. When we have rest, that for me is where my inspiration comes to me. It's the time where my conscious kind of takes a back seat, that conscious mind, and my subconscious kind of comes forward. I did used to teach lessons on this, and I really, really loved this, the idea of the conscious versus subconscious. And when we're keeping ourselves busy all the time, if I'm always in creation, if I'm always recording my podcast episodes, there's a really good chance that inspiration, that revelation from God is going to have a hard time coming through. But in this seasonal thinking, I had to chuckle. And I'm like, man, every season, I'm going to look back at these seasons over time. And it's literally going to be like a chapter book to my life, starting at this 41st year. And this first season, I can't help but laugh. This first season is likely going to be a lot of me doubting myself and then overcoming that doubt. It is. And if it feels redundant to you, can you imagine for a minute how redundant it is and feels in my own head? And the true fact of the matter is that I know this is the same for you. I know that I'm not alone. So hopefully, in listening to this, again, you're able to find a part of you that you relate to. Or I guess in listening to this, I hope you're able to find pieces of my story that you can connect to. And through connection, you can feel human and you can feel like, hey, if Heidi can find happy most of the time, so can I. It's so funny because I always felt like I wanted to do a podcast. And I felt like this was the place for me because Instagram, which is where I've traditionally showed up, just does not give enough space to showcase the depth of who a human is. And now that I'm here, I'm like, oh my gosh, it is really, really scary to go this deep with you guys. And I think I'm also, though, part of it is I'm in that space of my life where for the first time I am realizing that, and I think this is part of why, what I'm about to say is why I do feel a significant amount of stuckness before I record an episode, because I used to only ever share every single bit of my life. So from the time that I was on social media, I had no social media prior to me being on the show. I didn't have a Facebook. I didn't have a MySpace. I had nothing. I didn't have a Twitter, literally nothing. When I was pulled from behind the camera, managing the business side of it to in front of the camera, maybe this is new to some of you guys. It was really terrifying to me. It was not a thing that I ever wanted to do. And it was the thing that it was an opportunity that was presented and asked that was there. And truthfully, I struggled saying no to anyone ever in my life at that point. So of course I said yes. And part of that phase of my life came with a recommendation from our publicist to, hey, you actually need a social media. You need social media. You probably need a blog. You need these things to prove that you're not just Chris's wife. So social media started at a time for me where I was in the middle of having babies and raising my family and creating this TV show, creating transformation with Chris. And all I ever knew with social media was sharing every single bit of my life, right, wrong, or indifferent. Maybe part of the reason that's all that I knew, or that's what I did, is because I never really spent the time looking to see what anyone else was posting. And I also never could conceptualize the number of eyes that were on my page. I still have a hard time with it. Like when I see 500,000 follows on Instagram or whatever it is, 570, 560, I don't really understand how many people that is. Like, I don't think I've ever had a picture in my head of how many stadiums that fills. So it's not real. I also only see so many names like on repeat. So it does not feel real. It never has felt real to me. And so because I feel like I'm posting for an audience of one, which is myself, I have traditionally and historically blasted every bit of my life, because it was so much fun for me to use it as a memory book and to record some really special moments. And I mean, I would sit at night. I remember in Chris's in my old house, like he would go to bed and I would stay up at night when the kids were all asleep, and I would take the videos from the day and I would literally sit there and cry happy, grateful tears as I would post, as I would technically curate. If I'm being honest, you curate it, right? We put it together in a story the way that we love it. But as I would post and remember the day, and it was really, really special to me. And I still have times where I will go back to 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and see these amazingly elaborate stories that feel and are, for me, they're more of a memory book for me than they ever were content for you. And they were very real moments, very, very, and I think I even showcased mean mom Heidi. I would showcase me yelling because it was real or whatever it was. But that habit of posting all of the intricate details of my life so that I had something great to remember these moments, did have a negative impact down the road, in that sometimes I felt like I was casting pearls before swine. And I think my eyes were really opened to some of the hate and bullying that exists out there when Dave and I were dating. And when Dave was going through a really hard time, I actually had no clue. I had no concept that any of that existed. None. I was completely oblivious until, what year was that? I think it was 2022, just last year, when 2022 hit and Dave was going through some really hard things. My eyes were opened and some of my privacy was invaded, and there were some things that were scary. Like I felt like a security threat to me and my family. And that was I thought it had just started. And I remember crying. I'm like, what's happening? And Dave was like, Heidi, I said, why are people doing this to me? Why are they just starting? And he said, Heidi, they've always been doing this. You just had no idea that it was there. And I'm like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, I've always known that it was there because it was a part of my life before you. And he had always kind of tracked it himself where I didn't. And so experiencing the bullying that can happen, and yeah, it hurts me. Like if I actually take the time to read the comments, it definitely hurts. I'd be lying if I said it didn't, right? Because even though 90% of it might not be true, and it's someone just poking at me, there are times where what haters or bullies say trigger an insecurity in me, no matter how tough I am. Like, I'm a very tough person. I grew up with 3 brothers and a very tough father. And so I would say I have much thicker skin than most people. And I know that if I read comments that people make that are just mean, flat out mean, there's a really good chance some of it's going to get to me. And so what I decided to do, I know the stove is hot. I've burned myself on the stove. I'm not going to freaking go by the stove, right? So I do not listen. I do not read the comments because I have decided that the people in my life whose opinion I care about are the people who actually know who I am. They're the people who have walked by me, who have helped pick me up when I've fallen. They're the people who have proven to be true friends, right? And another thing I realized about what people say, if I focus on what they have to say about me, if I live my life trying to prove the haters wrong, if I'm actually inside of what they're writing and I am triggered by something, and I'm then on my social media trying to do something different to show them that no, then all that I'm really doing is I am pulling myself further away from what God wants me to do. Where if I don't know that they're there, and if I know that they're there, but if I don't read what they write, and if I trust that God has me in a place that he has me in for a very divine purpose. And if I walk into that light instead of spend time in the dark, hellish abyss, right? If I'm walking toward the light, I believe God will guide me. I believe he will fill me. I believe he will tell me what I'm supposed to do. But I only have so much energy on this planet. And I get to choose what to do with it. And I do not believe that God put me on this planet to listen to people talk negatively about me or my family or my friends, or really negatively in period. I do not believe God put me here to sit inside of that. I believe he put me here to be light. I believe he put all of us here to be light. I believe he put all of us here to amplify and nurture our gifts. I truly believe he put us on this planet to make our gifts known and to help other people with them. I do want to back up because what I was saying, why I brought up the haters, is that I do feel stuckness when I'm beginning a podcast. I want to circle back because I started on this whole bullying hater tangent because I was saying this has something to do with the stuckness. Not their words. It's not their words create stuckness in me because I don't know what they say. And I actually, to be totally honest, I have a team that goes in and manages that for me. So if you're one of them, I don't even see what you say. So my team might, but I don't. Because what you say does not matter to me. But it matters to you. And I feel bad for anyone that is in there saying hateful things because that it's only pulling them down. What I was saying though, is I had the realization a while ago, within this past year. So since Dave passed, I had a major realization that not everyone deserves all of me. And I have chills saying that because I want my daughters to hear that. This is what I try and teach them now. Not everyone deserves all of you, all of your beauty, all of your light, all of your grace, all of your kindness, all of your love. Not everyone deserves it. You deserve it first and foremost. I deserve mine first and foremost. And now knowing what happens when you actually cast pearls before swine, because man, there was some really beautiful pearls that I threw out into the world. And then there was some swine, these bullies, these haters that really muddied them up, right? And it was a beautiful lesson to me that I get to reserve the best parts of me. I get to reserve the deepest parts of me. I get to reserve my relationships, my dating life. I get to reserve that. I get to reserve the moments that I have with my kids for me and for them. And I don't have to share them, because behind that 569,000 person number on my Instagram following is not all people who know yet how to handle nice things. It's like that Taylor Swift song. This is why we can't have nice things, because you break them and I have to take them away, right? And it's awesome. I mean, I think we're all learning. And that's the thing that I am learning. But I do think as a result of it, when I'm going to do a podcast, there are times where I'm like, okay, what's too much? What's enough? What do I need to teach? What should I teach? What am I meant to teach? And how can I make sure that I'm no longer doing what I did before, where I'm taking the most sacred parts of my life and throwing them out there for the world? How can I convey beautiful sacredness without muddying my own shiny objects? Like, how can I keep what is sacred to me sacred? How can I protect in the future a relationship? Well, I can choose what I share and what I don't. So maybe season 1, you guys are getting all the lessons that I've learned. I know I've said it before, but when I date again, I will not be sharing it online. I won't. And in fact, you will know who I'm not dating by seeing who I post. That will be, you will definitely see who I post, and you need to know that is who I'm not dating. Because I want my future relationship to be sacred. I want it to be special. I want some of those moments with my kids to be sacred, and I want them to be special. I want them to feel sacred. I want them to feel special. My kids are very bright and they are very light, and not everyone deserves them, right? And I want them to feel like they deserve themselves. Now, I know I said I was going to do a future podcast on creation. And what's interesting is this was going to be the day that I recorded the podcast on creation, because you guys, there is so much good on the idea of creation. But I am now 40 minutes into this podcast, and I have not even touched on any of the amazing stuff that has inspired me recently around the topic of creation. So I think I'm going to have to save that for another day. What I will say is this. I want to end by inviting you guys. I wish I had a link. I don't have a link. I don't have a code, but I want to invite you guys to do this really cool thing that Kara, my friend Kara, the one who went to Optimize with me, she introduced me to. So this was that night that I was feeling super stuck, the night that literally she unleashed me. And one of the ways she unleashed me was by, number one, I was seeing her be bold and feel, I was watching her be bold, and I was watching her give herself permission to be authentically who she was. Like, even how she spoke to me, I was like, who is this new Kara? I loved it. I loved it. It was like she was living into who God made her to be. And I saw her, I witnessed her in her own creation, which is why I want to talk about creation, and I'll get to it, I promise. But she actually guided me to this thing that I feel like everyone here needs to do, okay? She had me download this app. There is a cost if you want to unlock parts of it. And I did pay for it. I don't have a discount code. I'm not getting a kickback on this. But it's an app called My Human Design. And this might sound really weird and really astrological because it is very interesting. But inside of this app, you enter your name, you enter your place of birth, you enter your time of birth, and it actually spits out what they say is your human design. And in it, it takes you through these things. Like for me, it says, I'm a generator. I am someone who is here on this planet to generate energy. And I started reading through this thing and it was really beautiful. And it said, you are the one who lights other people up. You are also the one who, if you are not doing what you love, you are the one who will feel insanely stuck. And then it said this really cool thing that said, if you feel emotion, if something feels off for you, it said, listen to your emotion, listen to your intuition because it is right. And they said there was something in it too about listening to the advice of others. But at the end of the day, it essentially told me, you already know inside of you what you need to know. And it reminded me of that necklace that I wear that Dave gave me. I think I mentioned that here. It was the last gift he gave me before he passed. And that necklace says, everything I need is within me. And I do believe that. I believe everything I need is within me. And I don't mean that I don't need God, because I believe God is within me. And I also do believe and who knows, maybe this human design thing, I haven't gotten all the way through it. Maybe it's something that, hey, no matter what section they say you are and they have you read, maybe it's accurate and applicable to everybody. I don't know. But what I do know are the very few things that I read that reminded me that I am light, that I am a generator, that I have been put on this planet to generate energy in other people. And when I am living in my alignment with my God, when I am doing things that I know I'm supposed to do, I'm in the right place with the right people at the right time, I will be guided to where I need to be. It also reminded me that I'm not here for me, right? I'm here for God. Like I am here for universe, creator, whatever you want to call it. I am here. I am a tool in their hands to give information to you to help you live a happier, healthier life. I truly believe that. There was something I listened to recently that was talking about the purpose of life. And it was saying that back in the day, I'm going to jack this up, but I'm going to tell you anyway, because guess what? This is what my podcast is. It's me doing me. But it actually was saying that back in the day, the purpose of life, I believe they were saying the Buddhists and the religious higher ups of years ago would always talk about how the purpose of life is to live a life you love and you enjoy. Right? The purpose of life is to find happiness, all about enjoyment, living a life you love, living it to its fullest. And then over time, we have essentially shifted into this world. This culture has molded us to believe that the purpose of life is to produce, and it's to be efficient, and it's to be enough, and to post more, and build these big businesses, and all these things that we absolutely cannot take with us. And the more we fall into what society has told us is the purpose of life, the further we are pulled away from the things that bring us the most joy, the things that God, I believe, put us on this earth to do, the further away I am pulled from being a good mother, right? The further away I am pulled from being a good me, being a good daughter, like being a good Heidi. And to a friend, I was talking to my friend after I listened to this podcast that talked about this. And I was saying, what's so interesting is I feel like we entered this world knowing that the purpose of life is to live life to its fullest and to enjoy it to its fullest, right? And then over time, what happens as we become older and we experience the world and we realize that oh my gosh, I'm not lovable unless I show up as this, or I'm only worthy if I produce, if I make money, if I build a business, if I have a podcast that smashes it, right? You have all these thoughts that come into your mind that start to tell you you are only enough if you actually achieve. And so the further we get pulled into achievement, the more miserable we become, and the more we climb the caterpillar pillar. That's a whole story for another day. There's a really great book called Hope for the Flowers. Go pick up that book, children's book, Hope for the Flowers. Instead of the hamster wheel, they call it the caterpillar pillar. So achievement is the hamster wheel. It's the caterpillar pillar. And then I feel like about halfway through our life, tragedy happens, or something big and magnificent in a sad way usually happens that really adjusts our lens, that literally maybe even rips our lens off and has us fumbling through the ground, right? Without our glasses on, trying to find some lens to put back on. And when we put it back on, we have a whole different perspective of life. Now, this happened for me this last year, not just with Dave's passing, but with my own experience that I've talked about on here, my anxiety. And when I put on the new lens, I suddenly saw, holy shit, it's not achievement that matters at all. And in fact, this achievement, this staying inside of this hamster wheel, this climbing this caterpillar pillar that literally leads to nothingness and death, and it leads to soul death. This is making me miserable. And so then, for me, and I believe for so many other people, that first half of your life, or first section of your life, is literally the first section of your life. And everything after that point becomes you undoing the wiring that we have spent many years creating, that's told us that we are only enough if we achieve. And undoing the wiring that has told us that the purpose of life is to be efficient. The purpose of life is to hustle. The purpose of life is to build these businesses. And suddenly we're like, no, 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 no. This life actually ends. And the purpose of life is to love and be loved, and to experience a life we love to our fullest, right? And there was something so beautiful about the human design for me. So downloading that app, entering all my info, reading my human design, which again, I have not made it all the way through, and being encouraged and having the confirmation that I am on track right now. I am doing what I need to do. And while there are so many times in my life where I don't know if I'm on track, right? Or I kind of question if I'm on track, knowing at that deepest layer that even in that unknowing and that moment of fear, it's like, okay, this is what life is supposed to feel like. This is what being human is. Sometimes being human is being alive and being in creation and being on fire. And other times being human is feeling stuck and fighting what you know you're here on this planet to do, and questioning whether you are actually qualified enough to do it. And I want to end with a quote that I've heard many times from many different people. This is not a me quote. If you have a calling from God and you know what He's saying, but you are terrified because you do not feel worthy, you do not feel enough, you do not feel qualified, I want to remind you of something that I think about all of the time. And it's the quote, God doesn't call the qualified. God qualifies the called. You have been called to something. Being called to greatness is not unique to me. It's not unique to the people in your life that you perceive as great. It's unique to humans. If you are human, I want you to know that I know in the deepest layer of my being that you are called as well. Now it's up to you to discuss with God or yourself, through yourself, what you are called to do. It is not up to you to decide whether or not you are qualified. It's not at all. And if you blunt your calling because you do not feel qualified, you are essentially telling God that He is wrong. You are not trusting God. You are living in fear. And as you remember, I have said the opposite of fear is lacking trust. You are telling God, you got it wrong. And I think we all know that God doesn't have anything wrong. So if there's one thing you walk away with today, well, I want it to be whatever you walk away with. But the last thing I'm going to leave you with is that reminder that God does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called. So maybe what you do today or this week is think through what it is you feel you're called to do. And in that, in knowing what your calling is, and I don't want you to feel like, well, he didn't call, I don't feel anything great. It's not a matter of how big, right? The magnitude of the calling that you perceive. I will say the greatest calling of my life, the one of the largest magnitude, is the calling that I sometimes get no appreciation for, and I sometimes get no validation, recognition for, and it is the calling of me being in my home with my kids. I created 4 beautiful beings, and I continue every single day to create 4 beautiful beings, both their body and them spiritually. That is a massive calling. And if you do not have kids, if you're listening to this and you do not have kids, I want you to keep in mind that you being a light in somebody else's life, you being that candle that can go light their candle, that's a calling too. So there is no calling too big or too small. There is just what is. So I would love to know. If you can please share with me, go share on my social media, email me. It's podcast@HeidiPowell.net. Share what your calling is. If you're confused, if you don't know, if you have questions about it, I want to hear. There's no wrong answer. There's no wrong comment. There's no freaking wrong podcast. This podcast is right. And this podcast is exactly what it's supposed to be. You guys, I love you. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for traveling this path with me. Thank you for letting me show up in all of my messiness, because there's so much messiness. And I actually was reading something at one point that said to be feminine and to be a woman is to be messy. And so as someone, me, who has oftentimes had an amplified masculine side with all of the things that I do, how I kind of rule the home, it is actually quite beautiful for me to, for once, be messy. I've never let myself be messy. I've always been put together. So thanks for joining me, and thanks for being messy. Thanks for sitting in my messiness with me and for loving me for all of it. I hope you know I love you. I see you. I hear you. I appreciate you. And I can't wait to talk to you next week.